Hi, Vanessa. Look, thank you so much for joining us today. How's things?
Yeah, good, good. I would have loved to see the sun out this weekend, but as we can all imagine, the weather's not so great. So keeping dry.
Yes, that's the key this week, and now it's still raining in Sydney anyway. The Look, one of the things we love to hear from our guests is their journey into the sector. Are you able to share that journey and how you came to the role you're in now?
Yes, certainly. So I guess my journey in the early childhood and OSH sector spans over 20 years, with a strong focus on quality, training, compliance, and safeguarding. And throughout my career, I've been passionate about ensuring that children's environments are not just safe, but also enriching and empowering. And I guess one of the things for me is when my firstborn started in daycare, I went to pick her up and I wasn't overly happy with the care that she had received for that day. So I took it upon myself to switch careers and went from finance into early childhood and went and did my diploma. And I thought I could do it better. And ever since then, I've just been in the sector, doing my part, seeing where I can make an impact. And currently, in my role as a general manager of risk at Junior Adventurers Group, I oversee the compliance and risk management across our OSH services. So my focus is on embedding a culture of proactive safeguarding, ensuring that policies translate into daily practice, and ensuring that teams and supporting teams in navigating the complex landscape of child protection and risk management.
Wow. And in fact, we find a lot of our guests on our podcasts really do fall into the sector. There's every now and then we get someone whose passion from early age was early learning, but mostly it's it's like you, Vanessa, where it's like, okay, I'm really interested in this, and they come from some other career, something else, and their focus is in early learning. And in all honesty, the saying is, one person can make a difference, right?
Absolutely. And I think if we all come into that sector with just wanting to make some change or the impact in one child's life, I think that, with that mindset, we can have a fantastic environment for the children that we're caring for.
Absolutely, absolutely. The important part, I suppose, is around you're doing what you say, compliance, risk, safety, which is where you started from. That whole I didn't like what they did or how they cared for my child, and you've led that journey right the way through.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, um, unfortunate it was for my own that I had to, start it. But I did think that, as a parent, I wanted that same care for all children that I expected of my own child. And so, yeah, jumped the ship and haven't looked back since.
And how did you find moving from finance to early learning and doing your diploma?
Oh, look, I think I was quite young at the time. I was very young at the time. So I think for me, I had that passion. There was a fire inside of me that wanted to do something. So it wasn't really thinking about how that impact was going to the impact that it was making on myself, more so around being excited about doing something new and learning and making a difference. So I think it was quite easy to make the change, but I am quite adverse to change just generally as a person anyway. So no, it was good.
If there's anyone out there in your position now listening that is in a different career and thinking, yeah, I would love to get into the sector, I would love to make a difference, what would your advice be to them?
Oh, do it. Absolutely. I think take the risk, and don't look at it. Don't look at that risk as something bad. Risk is opportunity. So I think if you can have that mindset to go, I'm going to try something different, and you're coming in it for the right reasons and with a passion, then absolutely go for it.
Yeah, and look, and I think with the sector being so much in the news lately around wages and things we do and the improvements we're making for educators, I'm certainly seeing that shift in conversation now. Do you think that's the same?
Yeah, look, I think, our environments keep evolving every day, and whether that's in your personal or your work environments. And so I think it's, a good opportunity for people to think about what does that look like for them and what do they want out of that role as well. So, yeah, I think if you're going to make that consideration, then, speak to people, go and ask. I think I'd love to hear from people that are wanting to know more about what we do and how they can contribute to that. So ask a friend. There's always somebody who knows somebody who's in early childhood education. So get to network and know some people and ask the questions that you want to know.
Actually, and even if you're in the sector, right, if you're looking for a change or a challenge and you're in that, moment of, do I leave the sector? We don't want anyone to leave. Or what do I do? Reach out, right? Reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to somebody. I think, the sector, like I said, is constantly evolving, and we've all had our challenges in the space, but I think it's remembering the why you got into it in the first place, and then finding that fire again. And you can very easily do that by networking with people, mentors, coaches, and like I said, speak to others. Sometimes outside your environment, it's good to talk to somebody who may be working for somebody else or maybe having a different experience to you, but we're all there for the right reasons. So reach out.
Actually, I'm going to take you back, Vanessa. Your very first role, what was it?
Oh, my very first role was a casual educator.
OSH level or early or in the early learning?
Early learning. So early learning while I was doing my diploma. So I'd do my diploma throughout the day, and then I'd go and do a 2-hour closed shift as a casual educator at a long daycare. And then once I did my prac, I was offered a room leader role during my prac
Wow.
in the nursery. So I've had all the roles. I've worked through the nursery, right through to the preschool room, into an assistant director role, a director, area manager, operations manager, and so on. So it absolutely has been a journey. And I was so passionate about it that I actually went and did my TAE so that I could then teach diploma and certificate 3. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it's very exciting, and there's lots of opportunities within the sector to work in a space that you're actually really passionate about. So yeah, that was my first role, casual educator.
And look where you are now. Amazing, really. And your training and assessment. It's like your Cert 4 in that as well.
Correct. Yes. So I went and did my training and assessment certificate 4 in training and assessment, and then I taught diploma and certificate 3. And I even taught year 11s and 12s now through their trade skill centres at their high schools. So those who are looking to not do their HSC and are looking for opportunities elsewhere. So did some training in that space as well, which was really rewarding. But yeah, there's lots and lots of opportunities if you want them.
You mentioned trade schools just then. Is that like part of the high school program in New South Wales or?
Yeah, so some of our high schools have like a trade skills centre where those students who are not looking to go on to university are looking for other pathways into their careers, and so they've got options of potentially doing a certificate 3 in early childhood. They might be doing a certificate in electricity for an electrician, carpentry, hairdressing. So they
Wow.
offer those bits and pieces, and throughout year 11 and 12, they go completing that. So when they finish high school, that they've got partial of a qualification.
Wow, that's fantastic to know, actually. And I suppose for our audience who are listening, if anyone is out there, even with children that might be looking to do it, or themselves, that's great to know that you can actually access those as well. Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing all those little bits and pieces. Now, one last thing is, what was the hardest day? Do you remember that made you go, I need to move on and get myself up into general manager role? Is there something that is there a point in time you think I need to do something more?
Oh, look, I think for me, particularly with myself, I set myself some goals around what I wanted to be doing every 2 years and what I wanted to learn in that time and progress myself into the next role. And I think it was definitely looking at, I did enjoy having oversight of what was happening in our service. So even going in, I think I might have been a room leader, moving into an assistant director role. I was quite passionate about having oversight of what was happening in the service, not just in my space, but making sure that all of our spaces were running equally. of a high quality, that families walking in didn't just see one thing that they liked, but walked through the entire service and had an overall feeling that, oh wow, like this is an amazing space. Every room I've walked into, our educators are smiling, they're happy, the children are happy, they're acknowledging us, and there's that customer service side of it as well, that want to make the families come to you. So I think for me, that's kind of where I started moving into that assistant director role, where I really wanted to oversee not just one space, but the entirety of the service. And I think that's how I continued to move on, and just coming in early and sitting with my director to learn things, learn how to do the rostering, learn how to do the budgeting, learn how to make the orders, and, manage the team around. So I think if you really want it, you can make it happen. Absolutely. So it just needs to be inside of you and are willing to learn. I don't think anybody ever stops learning at any point in their life. And even now, I continue to learn day to day around, and I learn from the people around me as well, our teams on the ground. So if you're willing, I think, yeah, that was probably the point in time where I kind of went, okay, I'm in this, and, in 12 to 18 months, I want to be a director, and it happened.
Yeah, it is about vision, isn't it? It's definitely about vision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now let's move on to our topic about safeguarding in a post-COVID world, and how do we balance safety, risk in childcare. So, are you able to explain to us the concept of safeguarding children and how it has evolved in the last 12 to 18 months post COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, the pandemic significantly reshaped the way that we think about safeguarding. Initially, much of the focus was on physical health, so minimising exposure to illness, increasing hygiene protocols, implementing social distancing. However, as the sector adapted, it became clear that safeguarding is much broader than just infection control. And over the past year and a half to 2 years, we've seen a shift towards a more holistic approach. So there's now a greater emphasis on emotional and mental well-being. So children have experienced significant disruption, and many are still adjusting. Safeguarding now includes proactive strategies for identifying and supporting children who may be struggling with anxiety or social development delays, behavioural changes. We've got digital safety now, that, with the rise of online learning and increased screen time, we've had to consider how to protect children in a digital space, and ensuring they engage safely in virtual environments, which in itself is significantly difficult.
It
Social
is.
connections. Yeah, I think, like digital safety at the moment is probably one of our biggest challenges, because it is everywhere. And so, how do we support children, but support families and educate everybody on how that is safe, when we truly don't always know ourselves what is safe?
Yeah.
Um, Social connections, rebuilding trust. So many children spent long periods of time isolated during lockdown. So we've needed to now look at how we re-establish routines that promote social and emotional learning. Um, I think the most important part is empowered reporting. So making sure that the sector has focused more on a child's voice and ensuring that they know how to express their concerns and feeling safe to do so. Um, I think there's been at times a lack of, I don't know what I should say. I don't know if I should say that. What if I say something and it creates a bigger problem than it is? But um, if you don't say anything at all and something happens, then, you know, by speaking up and having a voice, you could have significantly changed the life for a positive for a child. So um, we've learned that safeguarding is dynamic, and the key takeaway is that while health and safety remains paramount, we also need to ensure that children's holistic well-being is at the forefront of our decision making.
Absolutely. And like, have you noticed? And I know your OSH services, so you've got those children over 5 or 6. Um, have you noticed a significant impact around behaviours, around taking risks and things like that in your space?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think for us in OSH, we always need to remember that our our environments are not fit for purpose, like in an early childhood setting. And so we've got the children that during those isolation periods were in an environment that was safe. It was their own. It was their home. They knew where they knew their limits, where they could and couldn't go. And now where they're stepping into a school environment with not just some peers, but hundreds of peers and of all different ages, with all different experiences, all different behaviors as well. And now they're all in the one environment where they've got to learn to co-live together for a long period of the day, if you think about it. So we're definitely seeing those challenges when it comes to how we support children's behaviors.
Yes, and and of course, you know, you've got children aged from 5 to 13, and
Yes.
that's that age range. I mean, like you, 13-year-olds don't necessarily want to hang around 5-year-olds, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And look, for the most part, I'd love to say that, we do have some great environments, and, particularly in our spaces, we try to encourage all the children, to for the older students to support the younger students, and, educate them on what it's like to be at school and how we behave and interact with each other in those environments. But yeah, we often do get, the children who are struggling in those spaces. And like I mentioned, just even that social connection of
Yeah,
rebuilding, how do we make them feel secure and engaged in those group environments for short portions of the day, because we have them in the morning and then they go back into this huge environment and then come back into ours for a couple of hours in the afternoon. So
yeah. And
yeah.
sometimes obviously not even the same children, right? So at school with a group of friends, and all of a sudden those friends might go to a different service or go home or sports, whatever. Then you've got a child that comes in and then they've got to interact with different children on both ends of the day.
Yeah. And look, I like to think that, I think that that's definitely a positive as
Yes.
well, because they've got their little cohort that, at school during the school day, but then it almost forces them to interact with a different group of children that they may not normally interact with, which we've seen beautiful friendships flourish out of that as well, because now they've got OSH friends, and, there might be, you know, a friend there that they don't normally interact with during school time, but now they've got an opportunity and they're learning about each other. So we've seen some beautiful interactions and friendships come out of that as well.
Yeah, and that's so good. And just thinking of what you're saying, if at school, children all have days that they are good, that they don't feel so good, but they may feel a bit anxious. Whereas if they can have those two groups of friends, they can shift if they need to as well. So there's definitely a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Now, you did speak about evolving risk landscape in the sector and the importance of not becoming too risk averse. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. One of the challenges post pandemic has been the heightened focus on risk management. So sometimes to the extent that it limits children's natural development. So while safety is non-negotiable, we also need to acknowledge the critical role that risky play has in building resilience, problem-solving skills, and confidence. The key is managed risk. So not eliminating risk entirely, but ensuring that it's developmentally appropriate and properly supervised at the same time.
Yes, and I suppose just going to that Queensland, the cyclone that hit, I'm thinking about all the things that are in Queensland, all those snakes that could now be there, all those things that could be in yards and schoolyards that weren't there before. So there's certainly going to be some interesting times ahead around risk.
Oh, yeah. Look, and there is, looking at risk benefit, and not always saying no to an activity that potentially has risk, but assessing the benefits alongside that. And I think that's something we don't always do, because we're very quick to go, well, no, that's not going to be safe for these reasons, as opposed to assessing it and going, well, it might not be safe, but we can make it safe in these ways. And, for an example, climbing trees helps children develop coordination, spatial awareness, and confidence. So instead of banning it, we could teach them how to access those those risk environments themselves and use techniques and recognize their own limits as well. So supporting them, supervision with empowerment.
Yeah, and I suppose that also then relates to what you spoke about earlier, is the digital safety, because we just can't stop them from using technology or online
Yeah.
platforms. And like you said, I mean, look, even adults are at risk of being scammed for whatever, or hacked, or whatever it is that you know that you see it every day in the news about someone having an issue that's that's older. So how do we manage that risk for children? We just can't take that away.
No, absolutely not. And I think, look, supervising them, but also giving them that autonomy as well is really crucial for it. The digital environment, as I mentioned earlier, it's, there are so many different ways that it can be dangerous for children. So I think it's around educating them that when they're not sure of something, or something that doesn't feel right, that they know that they can go and speak to somebody or inform somebody that something has happened. I think for us, particularly in our OSH environments, it is very difficult to police sometimes that technology. And whilst we do our best to make sure that we have processes in place, children have access to phones, they have access to, smartwatches, iPads, and a lot of the time we've got, we do have some schools that have that are a technology school, so they have iPads and laptops that children require for their schooling. So looking at how we continuously are educating our families, educating the children and our teams on the safety in the digital space.
And with that, and I know you mentioned the climbing of the tree. That was fantastic, because we all know how, we all love to climb a tree if we go back. Maybe not so much now, but I certainly did when I was younger.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would educators find that balance between keeping children safe and providing opportunities for risky play? Is there, especially in the current environment, of course, is there other things you could, or like a recipe for them, I suppose, to think, I can do that, I can do this risk assessment, I can make it safe?
Yeah, look, and I think that that goes with ongoing training and support. So they need to feel confident in facilitating risky play safely. So providing professional development, supervision techniques, outdoor strategies, but also having a risk adverse attitude, which stems from, not having fear of injury. So I think when educators are involved and engaged themselves in the activity, as opposed to setting out an activity for children and just watching and supervising, making sure the children are enjoying themselves. But if they're in it with them, they're learning at the same time that the children do. Because as many of us do, like if I go back to my days of being in the toddler room, my toddlers loved dinosaurs and I knew nothing about them. And so my knowledge of dinosaurs has come from, extending on that knowledge and scaffolding with the children. So I think if we can go back to, we're not just here to supervise, we're not just here to make sure that everything is running smoothly, but we're there to enjoy that time with them. I think that's a really it creates the opportunity for our team members to go, okay, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Sometimes looking at something seems much more scarier than when you do it yourself. So I think
Yeah.
if they can get in there with the children, then, those questions, what if something goes wrong, they go away because you're there in that moment. And look, things will always go wrong. That's just the nature of it is. It's just how we manage those situations.
And it is, and it's not being scared, I suppose, that if something does happen, what's the process, right? What's the procedure? If you're confident in the other end of it, where something, and we can't eliminate risk. There's no possible way we can do that. But we can look at the way we can minimize it, but also what policy processes are in place at your service. Make sure you know them.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they're there to protect you. That's one thing that we tell our teams all the time. The policies and the processes, they're there to protect you, to make sure that we're doing everything we can in line with the legislation. But at the same time, it's essential that we don't unintentionally hinder children's development by being overly cautious. Instead, we should focus on teaching children how to engage with risk safely, because learning to manage risk in early childhood prepares them for the real world.
Yeah, as it certainly, yeah, we always have risk, don't we? I mean, you're walking out in the street, there's always a risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love what you just said before, actually, about engaging as an educator in the play. Do you think sometimes all the educators get, or teachers, whoever it is that's supervising the children, get caught up in the operational stuff, and they're trying to supervise and do stuff and not participate with the children? Is there that sort of element?
Yeah. Oh, look, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't disagree for one moment. I think there is always, and there's a lot that the sector always needs us to be looking out for, that needs us to be doing. There's always something new information that needs to be implemented and practices that need to be changed. So I do think that it is very easy for our educators, regardless of whether it's an OSH setting or the early years, that we can get very caught up in the day-to-day operations and the things that need to be done and marked off for us. But I think it's important to take opportunities of those moments, that when you find them, don't ignore them. If there's an opportunity for you to go, okay, I've got a few minutes, I don't actually have to do anything, rather than sitting and watching, I think it's really important for them to get in there, get their hands dirty, like,
Yeah,
that's what will make the
yeah,
difference. So there will be pockets of opportunities, and it won't happen every day all the time. And I know that. I've come from being in there with the children myself, so I can absolutely appreciate that. The day-to-day operations can get the best of us at most of the time. But when those opportunities are there in front of you, take them, because you don't realize how much in that moment you could have changed for the children. And you'll find that they'll come back to you and go, oh, remember when we did this, can we do that again? And they really want you involved and a part of that experience with them as well.
yeah. And look, do you think there's opportunity, like even those day-to-day operations, we know we've got to do audits, we've got to do checklists, we've got to do, opens and closes and all of those things that have to happen. Is there an opportunity where you could even engage the children to help you with some of those things, right? So rather than thinking I have to do it separately, is there an opportunity that they could actually engage some of the children to go on that journey around those checks with them as well?
Oh, look, definitely in the OSH environment, there is those opportunities. It is, it's opportunities to assess and navigate risks themselves, and they develop better decision making skills for that. So, as opposed to saying to the children, "Oh, we can't use that space," it's posing those questions. Why do you think we can't, and what will happen if you step on that slippery rock? It encourages that critical thinking for children, and it actually helps us as educators, because we can now understand how they think around those spaces and those environments. And they're essentially helping us do our role for us. So it is important to get the children engaged in those activities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, lastly, before what we love to know from our guests is what do you see are the issues facing the sector over sort of next 3 to 5 years, from your perspective?
Yeah, look, I think for me, the definitely number one is mental health and well-being. So we're seeing an increased focus on mental health, and not just for children, but also for our educators, and embedding social emotional learning and trauma-informed care into our everyday practice. So that's going to be crucial for us in the sector, to look at how we put support mechanisms in there for that. Um, our people are our most important as well. So whilst our children are our priority, our people are very important to what we do day to day. And if we don't have them, we won't be able to provide the care that we need to. Regulatory changes and compliance evolution. I think the sector is facing ongoing regulatory shifts, particularly in that safeguarding and child protection space. So we need to ensure that it doesn't become a tick box exercise, but it's embedded into a strong safeguarding culture. And I think lastly, inclusion and cultural safety. So supporting diverse communities, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural safety, neurodivergent children and children with additional needs, will continue to be a priority. So our services will need to strengthen their inclusion frameworks.
Yeah, and with that inclusion, do you think sometimes um, we get caught up in the word inclusion? We just say, "Oh, we'll just do inclusion now." inclusion now, and do it for half an hour where they think that's what you've got to do, rather than actually inclusion is your whole day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just, it is that we do things when there are special events. And again, that also sometimes becomes a tick box. But it's around looking at inclusion is ongoing, and it becomes as embedded practice. So you might do something today, you might do nothing for the rest of the week, but then you do something again next week, and then the week. So it's how does that become an ongoing practice that is embedded within your service, and not just within the service, but the team and the families and the children, and that they know. I think cultural safety is a big part of it as well. So making sure that our families, particularly our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families, feel safe at your service, that they can start building those connections, because that is important to them as well. So the sector is evolving rapidly, and while challenges exist, they also present opportunity for us to innovate and refine some best practice.
And we also learn from it, right? We're also learning from it. As you said, never stop learning. So anything we do that is around that inclusion, neurodivergent child, children with additional needs, things that we may, as a group, may not have known before, we're learning how to best support those children as well.
Absolutely. Oh, and sorry, I did forget, but digital safeguarding, technology and digital safeguarding, I think in the next couple of years, I think that's we'll see more integration in education and care settings. So looking at how online spaces, I think online spaces will become an emerging concern.
Absolutely. That's going to be very interesting to watch over the next couple of years, isn't it?
Yep.
Well,
Absolutely.
Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it, and great to see you again.
No, thank you, Paula. Always a pleasure to have a chat with Paula, guys. So if you ever get the opportunity to have a coffee with Paula, she's definitely someone you want to network with.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you so much, Vanessa. And back at you. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you and meet you over the last couple of months as well. And lastly, really appreciate your time, because we know everyone's busy. So for the sharing 40 minutes to get this out and share that conversation around child safeguarding to our audience is so important. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone listening.
Thank you.